health is just so heavily regulated. It's just a painful business to be in. It's just not necessarily, how, I want to spend my time. Even though we do have some health projects, and we'll be doing that to a certain extent. But I think the regulatory burden in the U.S. is so high that I think it would dissuade a lot of entrepreneurs.
We have Calico, obviously, we did with Art Levinson, which is a pretty independent effort, focused on health and longevity. I'm really excited about that. I think that I am really excited about the possibility of data also to improve health, but that's, I think what Sergey's saying, it's so heavily regulated. It's a difficult area. I've been giving an example. Imagine you had 10,000, or imagine you had the ability to search people's medical records in the US. And any medical researcher could do it. Maybe they have the names removed. And maybe when the medical researcher searches your data, you get to see which researcher searched it and why. Imagine that would save 10,000 lives like in the first year. Just that. And that's almost impossible to do because of HIPAA.
Yeah.
So I do worry, we kind of regulate ourselves out of some really great possibilities that are certainly on the data mining and
yeah, 2 or 3 years ago, I wrote a blog called Do We Need Doctors? And I speculated Dr. Algorithm will do most of the work. Anmol from Ginger.io is in here somewhere. They introduced their psychiatric monitoring app at Kaiser.
Yeah, I was talking to them about that last night.
Yeah.
That's cool.
In the first week, Kaiser believes they saved 3 suicides because the apps alerted the nurse that the patient was in a suicidal state. That's just the beginning to come, but that feels like a software business, mostly, delivered mostly through mobile. And it's more needed in the least regulated areas, India, Africa, places like that. So, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say in the U.S., I think diabetes and heart disease are both about $300 or $400 billion a year in expense. That's of the 1.2 trillion, so it's a pretty big chunk. So definitely just making a dent in those would be a big deal for people.
And in fact, the first, most people may not know this, but the first mobile app got approved as a pharmaceutical because it's directly competitive with metformin, which is the principal drug for blood sugar reduction. So it has the same effect, and the FDA approved it, of course, with the funny caveat that it has to be refilled every 3 months, and it's priced at $182 a month.
Do you want to take any from the audience? Or
Yeah, let's. I want to have one question for you, Larry. You lost your voice last year. You've talked a little bit about what you learned from that.
Yeah, it was great. Sergey encouraged me to, make all the details public, and that was really great to get a lot of feedback and information and things like that. So that's a good example. I think, we're talking about medicine, but a lot of the angst people have about their medical records is related to insurance, which we can just fix the insurance. Point of insurance is to cover medical issues. So we somehow worked ourselves into a state around that. Obviously, I don't care very much about that, so I don't have that issue. But I think, anyway, I don't think my voice is likely to get much worse, so I'm happy about that. Get my job done fine. But I think the set of rules that we have, one thing that I would observe is that the complexity of government increases over time. So if you just look at all of our democracies around the world, the amount of regulation and law we have increases without bound. So I was trying to reduce the complexity in Google. I was saying, we're getting to be a bigger company. Let's take our rules and regulations, let's make sure they stay at 50 pages so that people can actually read it. But the problem that I discovered about that was that by reference, we include the entire law and regulation of the entire world. Because we're a multinational company, we operate everywhere. Our employees, what they do affects everything, and so in some sense, we'd have to read, the 100 million pages of law and regulation that are out there. There's probably something like that. I don't know how much it is, but it's very big and getting bigger. So one thing I proposed is that, I was talking to some government leaders. I said, actually, the president of South Korea, it was great. I said, hey, why don't you just limit your law and regulation to some set of pages? And when you add a page, you have to take one away. And she actually wrote this down. She's great. And,
Is that one of the pages now?
Yes. No, that's only one sentence, But I do think that otherwise, I think the government's likely to kind of collapse under its own weight, despite people being good and well-meaning, just because of that one issue of complexity increasing. I just don't think it's reasonable. And when we went public, laws were from 60 years ago. If you took a random law professor, locked them in a room, and told them to rewrite those rules, you'd have something much better come out. But we're not doing that.
Larry,
How do you know that? You don't know about the dungeons filled with law professors? It's like, that's the other Google X project I have.